again, it's me, Chloe. I am a sci-fi fantasy author with a focus on history. So the format is a little different than my other videos. I'm still in the library, I'm still in a study room, but I am recording this on my phone in between classes because, well, that is where I am at right now and have the time for. So I already have actually at the time of recording this found 3 different books I want to start looking at for research purposes. Last time I did a miniature version of this on Instagram, and that was for ancient Egyptian history, focusing on the 18th dynasty of Egypt. Now, this time I want to look at the Kimberleys, and more specifically, other time in Europe. I wanted to focus on Austria, but I did come across other books that seemed like they might have some stuff. So the first one I found was the one I specifically was looking for, 18th Century Europe by Anderson. So we have that. And let's see, I want to be able to show you guys like the actual information. So this is all the information on my book if you are curious about finding it for yourself. So this is published by the Oxford University Press in 1966. So just to go through this book and figure out, and the others, and figure out what parts of this, what events I can include in the last Kimberley book, which will be going through their entire life from Africa all the way to America in the 2020s. This actually might be nearly the same. Oh, is this the same book? I think I may have grabbed the same book twice. No, it is not. It is just by I believe it's by the exact same man, M.S. Anderson. It's a different publishing company. This gray one goes through from 1713 to 1783, and the red one goes from 1713 to 1789. So this is the one I'm looking at now. So, and in case you want to look for it yourself, here's the information. And now our last book that I did pull was Toward the French Revolution, which is kind of different than the other ones, but my timeline that I have, and if you look at it, if I went too far up, they stayed in France until the revolution began in 1789. So they were in France from 1600 to 1789. They left due to the French Revolution and ended up in England. So this book I thought might have some interesting aspects that I could include. So I think I'm gonna start with, first I want to make sure that I am actually pulling the one I was actually looking up, and I have the footage included in here of finding the book that I wanted. I did not even grab that one. That's fine. The ones I found are good. We can always go back and look for those other ones. So let's start with the little one, this one. So I want to make sure I properly denote where I'm getting this from, because I will have a partial bibliography available once this book is published, which I did do the same thing for my Thera things. That is all on my website. I do have a partial bibliography of the resources I was able to remember using and recorded using for writing The Rise of Thera and Thera Living Enduringly and all of that, which wasn't as much as I am with this, but there was a good bit of research that did go into that for the historical aspects of the Egyptian culture. So this book is titled 18th Century Europe, 1713 through 1789. By M.S. Anderson. So let's take a look at what were actually included and what parts are important. So as you can see, I've switched my phone over so you can actually see what I am looking at here. There's a map in the early 18th century, which that'll be very helpful. Struggles between the states. Let's take a look. So 1713, where would they have been? They would have been in France. That entire 1713 through 1789. Yes, they would have been in France during this entire period given here. Society and economic life is what I really wanted to look at. Let's take a look at this map first. Oh, here it is. This is Europe in 1713. Okay, so they're in France in 1713. But if we look at this, we have the Habsburg territory over here, and we have the Prussian territory all up in here. And it looks like that's the boundary of the Holy Roman Empire, of what's, I guess, not in it, is my guess. So that's interesting. So they would have been in here. These are the cities they did find most important. And then Spain as well. And we are back up on the big screen. So you can see what we are figuring out here. So I want to go to the Society and Economic Life, which is on page 49 in the book, in case you happen to find this book or want to look at it yourself. I don't know why you would, but I want you to be able to follow along if you are interested in this topic. So since it was very stable during the 18th century, it was very slow to change, lots of powerful traditions, but there were growing economic forces possibly pushing more change. There was hereditary ruling groups involved, and a very small minority were educated, because it was understood at the time that societies are the work of man and not God. So it was only among this minority that there's any belief that radical social change was possible. So those who couldn't read did not believe that society would change or evolve. There was a rise of suspicion of Freemasonry, as they were recruiting many to the Masonic lodges, encouraging marriages of members between different classes. There's a ruling class being distinguished by their dress, other signs of rank of who was allowed to wear what, or was even forced to wear. In 1710, the Council of Ten in Venice ineffectively threatened to find and imprison any noble who appeared in public without wearing his vesta preza, even in England. In 1732, the King's Advocate exhibited a complaint in the High Court of Chivalry, which ceased to function 5 years later, against the widow of a merchant for using her husband's funeral in signs of honor not belonging to his condition. So tradition was very, very important in this time. Okay, so in every part of Europe, there was the portmanteau terms of nobility, peasantry, bourgeoisie, or the middle class. A peasant in Normandy was no more the same as one in Livonia. Then a member of the British House of Lords resembled one of poor uneducated squires, made up the majority of Polish nobility. So there's a lot of variation in the classes between different countries, it seems like. There was a lot of generalizations that were made about society at this time, and the ruling class was very heterogeneous and very, very wealthy. There were titulos, the titled persons. There's 535. In Spain, there's a census in 1789 that said there was 119 grandees, and then 535 titulos, which were titled persons, and 500,000 hidalgos, most of whom were very poor or lived in poverty. And in Poland, there's a small number of very, very rich and powerful families possessing thousands of serfs. There were also thousands of poor and uneducated squires who legally had a lot of privilege, but they were not members of the same like upper class. What I'm really looking for is any mentions of race or how that played into things, because the Kimberleys are African. Important to note that they are African, and that does affect how they live. In France, for example, there were, especially in richer areas, a considerable number of large tenant farmers who sometimes formed a closed social group, intermarrying and succeeding each other from father to son on the land they rented from some noble, called the laborers. The medium-sized peasant holdings they rented. Then they had their higher laborers, which is a class below them, couldn't rise up but did fall lower. So it said that in France, in the last decades of the old regime, it was increasingly difficult for bourgeoisie to achieve nobility. So that bourgeoisie was the middle class. So it was impossible to move up. Okay, all the bishops were nobles, none of them were non-noble. And French nobility had alienated the middle class by reasserting their supremacy and claims of ancestry and agotizing the peasants. Nowhere else in Europe did this like feudalism go this far. It's interesting of how I want to fit them into all of this, because there is a lot that went on in Europe, a lot of tensions and changes and pressures on people to make changes that they weren't ready for. For the Industrial Revolution in the 1780s, which is by the time they were already in America. So we are getting almost past in here what I'm looking at. So far there was no mention of race in here. So that was interesting. I mean, it didn't really give me what I was looking for of how my specific characters would live in this society. It didn't paint an image that I was looking for. Not to say that's like wrong or anything, but to say that I was looking for specific details that this book did not have. This other one, Europe in the 18th century, let's take a look at this one next. I don't know how different it's gonna be. It's by the exact same author, about the pretty much the same time period, it seems like. It looks like it's a bit more of a timeline. About the same stuff. I might have to take a closer look at this book. It might be very helpful. I do want to make sure I note this one. In the past, when I've done research, I actually have found some really interesting books. Because I do like using books for research rather than the internet, because sometimes the internet doesn't talk about the topics I want it to. And I don't know if I'm just looking in the wrong places, but I've been doing research on things for a very long time, whether it be writing or school or personal projects. And the last book is about the French Revolution, so I don't have a lot of time before my class starts, so we're going to do a brief perusing of this book. Okay, the French Revolution, Europe and America in the 18th century world, my gunshot and luck. This is published in 1973, so a little later than the last one. We'll take a look at remembering that they were in France from 1600 to 1789. And we'll start in chapter 4. This is not talking about what I was hoping it would. So there's a move towards secularism, of moving away from religion and into more secular society. Hi, so I am filming this outro months later because I forgot about this video. Just want to say a few quick things about researching for historical writing. It can get boring very quickly, and sometimes you do not find what you're looking for, but that what you might consider unrelated research, like in this case, things that weren't quite what I was looking for, are still so important, because you need to orient yourself in the society that you're writing in. You need to be able to think like the people of that time, which is what I feel like that research was able to help me to do, is understand the people in the society that they were living in. And I will definitely probably do a video in the future talking about my research process, how I find books and everything that goes into that. And I hope you found this helpful and interesting and learned something new. I will see you guys next time here on YouTube or on Instagram. All of my books will be in description. All of my socials will all be down in description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.